What's up, guys? Welcome to the Outer Nexus. Tonight, we are going to get into the Golden Dome, the implications of space defense, the kind of technology involved, what it means, how important it is. Um, let's start out with this picture here. Sorry about my voice tonight. Got a little bit of cold going on. This is the placards that Trump displayed when he was announcing the Golden Dome. And I mean, this is just kind of golden in itself. I need to highlight this quote here. It's here we go. This is a very dangerous world. We're going to protect our citizens like never before. President Donald J. Trump. That's the quote.
Yes.
That is the fucking quote.
Like never before.
They couldn't come up with some Halo level shit. It's just like, I feel like Trump was like, no, I'm going to put a quote on this one.
Yeah,
I want my quote on this one. And then you have like an AI image over here. But really, it's supposed to illustrate the type of advanced defense network system that they are developing for this. Do you have any comments before I get into this article?
No, not really. I mean, we all know it's like based off the Iron Dome.
Yeah, it's based off the Iron Dome. I'm going to read the CNN article about it. Trump details plan to build Golden Dome missile shield by end of term. President Donald Trump has laid out new details of his ambitious plan for a multi-billion-dollar Golden Dome missile defense system to protect the United States from foreign attacks, saying it should be complete before he leaves office. We'll have it done in 3 years, Trump told reporters as he detailed the plan in the Oval Office on Tuesday. Once fully constructed, the Golden Dome will be capable of intercepting missiles even if they are launched from the other sides of the world. High-profile defense contractors and tech companies, including Elon Musk's SpaceX, are already jockeying for the job to build the shield, making pitches directly to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. But experts have also voiced skepticism about the time frame and cost put forth by the White House, or even the feasibility of such a project. The U.S. administration has remained vague on its plans for developing the missile shield, which takes inspiration from Israel's Iron Dome. While it is not yet clear what exactly the so-called Golden Dome will look like, there are significant differences in scope and scale to Israel's shield. The Iron Dome selectively protects populated areas from short-range threats in a country the size of New Jersey. Trump wants a space-based missile defense system capable of defending a country around 450 times larger from advanced ballistic and hypersonic missiles. And then they have a graphic for how the Iron Dome works, but that's not how the Golden Dome is going to work. Well, we'll check out what Grok has to say about that later. The project will cost about $175 billion, Trump said, that's pretty fucking hefty, honestly, and will be led by General Michael A. Gutlein, Vice Chief of Space Operations at the United States Space Force. Trump said $25 billion will be allocated from his sweeping spending cut and tax bill, which he's pushing House Republicans to pass. I think that's called the Big Beautiful Bill. People are saying it's probably not going to pass the way it is. He also said Canada has called us wanting to be involved in the project and to be protected under the Golden Dome. In a statement provided to Reuters, the office of Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said that he and his ministers, along with their American counterparts, were discussing how to negotiate a new security and economic relationship between the two countries, which naturally include strengthening NORAD and related initiatives such as the Golden Dome. Earlier in May, the Pentagon submitted small, medium, and large options to the White House for developing the Golden Dome. Trump didn't specify a final choice on Tuesday, but said that they had selected an architecture for the state-of-the-art system. It seemed like they went with the large option from what they were talking about, but the administration's cost and construction time estimates run contrary to those given by other military officials. Retired Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery previously told CNN he believes creating a ballistic missile and defense system may be possible in 7 to 10 years, but even then it will have severe limitations, potentially capable of protecting only critical federal buildings and major cities. Other experts have told CNN that several hundreds of billions of dollars would probably be a conservative estimate, with some saying projecting the total cost of such a project was essentially impossible. The U.S. has talked about building a missile shield for decades, but it has never been realized because of the gaps in technology and cost. The Defense Intelligence Agency recently released an unclassified assessment underscoring how U.S. adversaries like China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea could potentially target the American mainland with a variety of ballistic missiles, long-range cruise missiles, bombers, and hypersonic missiles. Chinese officials reacted to Trump's announcement Tuesday by condemning the Golden Dome and urging the U.S. to abandon their plans. The project carries a strong offensive nature and could heighten space militarization and an arms race, undermining global security, said Mao Ning, a spokesperson for China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Constructing the shield is a massively complex task that will require a network of government agencies and private contractors, according to multiple sources familiar with the planning process. So before we get into the next one, because the next one's basically about China's response to it,
Yeah.
What's your opinion so far?
So one of the main things that was brought up here that I have questions about, is I do wonder what kind of war games they've run for the Golden Shield. The Golden Dome here. And the reason I'm saying that is because if we get certain country, like if we had to fight certain countries that are like currently even allied with us, for the most part, we could probably defend ourselves because it's a lesser threat. But if you get into Russia and China, who can launch complete all-out offenses, how much of that offense can, because like this thing said, the system may only be capable of protecting critical federal buildings in major cities. So if an all-out offensive comes, what is it actually going to protect?
And so that's, I'm glad you brought that up, because my opinion about this, the way that they're talking about it, is this is primarily going to be space-based. People are looking at this through the perspective as though it's going to be just like the Iron Dome. I think it's going to have similar aspects to the Iron Dome, but it's primarily going to be space-based, radar-based, direct energy weapon-based. A lot from that angle to take care of the broad spectrum of threats. And I don't think they would move forward with a plan this ambitious unless they knew that they could pull that off. Otherwise, they would call it something else, like they would call it a different defensive strategy for defending federal sites and structures. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I somewhat agree. I would because I would hope the same thing. That you're not going to move forward on a project that it's like, and it's obsolete.
And it's,
and so, but I will say that one of the last big projects that they did, in my opinion, and this was a while ago, obviously because it's been out for a while, was the F-35.
The F-35. Is this another F-35 moment?
I do wonder about that, because that was a turning point where it's like we could do jets or we could do drones. And
that's interesting, because now I believe, hang on, let me just check who made the F-35. The Lockheed Martin did. So Lockheed Martin will also be the primary drivers for the Golden Dome. And in the conference with Trump and the military generals, and I'm assuming maybe that guy was from Lockheed, they were basically stating that these old guard defense contractors are kind of having to open the doors to the newer guys to get them involved, because we need a comprehensive defense industry that's able to integrate with all this stuff. But the fact is, it's still Lockheed. They're still kind of outdated. Are they going to deliver another? Are they capable of leading this project? Are they capable of managing this project?
Not only just managing the project, but like managing the expectations of this kind of project. Because like you can't just put it, like if you put out a bigger Iron Dome, that is not going to work.
Yeah.
And granted, I will admit that, like, okay, we're going to have better weaponry on our dome, but is it going to be like, again, is it going to be like, if a full out offensive comes, we're protecting a couple of cities?
Now, here's my angle coming in, because the other angle of this is it's, again, Lockheed Martin. So the other hidden angle of this might be they might be using their TR-3Bs as part of this new defense system. That could be what's happening here, is they might be integrating the UAP technology, UFO technology, the black triangles into this defense system. Trump was talking about how we have super technology. He was literally saying how this system will be able to stop bullets, like individual bullets. He said that in the thing. And it's like, that might just be Trump hyperbole, like he always does. But that was a pretty specific thing that he said. And you have General Steve Quast coming out saying a lot of wild stuff in this regard, that we have these kinds of technologies. I think that's what this is. I don't really think this is going to be like the Iron Dome. I think this is going to be aspects of the Iron Dome, primarily space-based, and they might throw in some UFO tech in there too.
And as much as I wouldn't want to say this, I have respect for the person that runs this company.
Yeah.
But I hold back a little when it comes to defense contractors in the first place, even though it's something I've even considered and I have done in my past. The only company I think that could pull this off in the way that we imagine it is Anduril.
Is Anduril?
Yeah.
So I mean, there's Anduril, kind of. I think SpaceX has the edge. I think the SpaceX Starlink system is going to be a huge part of this. Well, not that in particular, but the technology behind it. I think this is going to be essentially an evolution of Reagan's Star Wars, as Trump addressed. I think he said this is going to be like a direct continuation of Star Wars. I don't know if that's, obviously it's going to be different now than Reagan's vision in the 80s, but that's what he was saying.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think the technology from these other companies is key.
Yeah,
but I think the only one that could pull the brains off on this one.
Yeah, and I think Anduril is going to be a huge part with the actual interception of these things and creating drone networks. But okay, so it's interesting. The Fox article kind of picks right up where the CNN article left off at. China accuses U.S. of turning space into a war zone with Trump's Golden Dome missile defense project. Beijing claims U.S. space-based defense project will exacerbate the risk of turning outer space into a battlefield. China is concerned by Donald Trump's proposal for a new U.S. missile defense system called the Golden Dome, which is designed to protect against adversarial attacks on America. The Golden Dome has a strong offensive nature and violates the principle of peaceful use in the Outer Space Treaty. Chinese Foreign Minister Mao Ning said Wednesday the project will heighten the risk of turning space into a war zone and creating a space arms race and shake up the international. This is crazy coming from China, and shake up the international security and arms control system. Mao said, we urge the U.S. to give up developing and deploying global anti-missile system. Like, this is so crazy. Like,
the testicles,
the fucking audacity to be like, no, they're also doing it.
Yeah,
like China, if you didn't do it, we wouldn't do it either.
You should have given us another 5 years so that we could start doing it.
Right? We could start doing it. Yeah. Like, they're literally on the moon mining helium-3. You know that, right? China's up there mining helium-3 right now.
I didn't know it was right now.
It's right now. Like, that was the thing that just came out, is they're doing that right now. I think in the Tycho crater, they are mining helium-3 for fucking quantum computers right now. Okay, we urge the U.S. to give up developing and deploying global anti-missile system. Both China and Russia have placed offensive weapons in space, like anti-satellite capabilities that could potentially be used to try to take the U.S. offline, American intelligence officials have warned. However, China said it was the U.S. that was obsessed with offensive space dominance. That's probably true, though. The U.S., by putting itself first and being obsessed with pursuing absolute security, violates the principle of and diminishes the security for all and undermines the global strategic balance and stability, Mao said. China is gravely concerned about this. She added, "We urge the U.S. to give up developing and deploying the global anti-missile system at an early date and take concrete actions to enhance strategic mutual trust between major countries and safeguard global strategic stability." Trump laid out a broad overview of the Golden Dome plan from the White House on Tuesday, projecting the cost figure at $125 billion. The current government funding bill working its way through Congress includes an initial $25 billion to kick off the project. Trump also offered an ambitious timeline for the project to be completed before he leaves office. Oh, look at that. That's interesting. Fox News Digital has reached out to the White House for comment on China's reaction. The Kremlin, meanwhile, said the Golden Dome project could prompt talks on strategic arms control between Russia and the U.S. The U.S. withdrew from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty in 2019 and the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty in 2002, citing Russian violations, which Moscow denied. Now that the legal framework in this area has been destroyed and the validity period has expired, or deliberately, let's say, a number of documents have ceased to be valid, this base must be recreated both in the interest of our two countries and in the interest of security throughout the planet, said Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov. China's space-based targeting capabilities have grown most impressively in recent years, according to Space Force Vice Chief General B. Chance Saltzman, with hundreds of satellites now dedicated to tracking U.S. assets in orbit. He called China's rapid advances mind-boggling during a hearing on Capitol Hill last month and said the U.S. was at risk of losing its dominance in orbit. Weeks before that, Space Force Vice Chief of Operations General Michael Gutlein revealed that China has been practicing satellite dogfighting. Yep, a sign of its growing ability to conduct complex operations in orbit. Space Force has observed 5 different objects in space maneuvering in and out and around each other in synchronicity and in control. That's what we call dogfighting in space. They are practicing tactics, techniques, and procedures to conduct on-orbit operations from one satellite to another. And you fucking know China's doing that. You know they are planning for this.
They're absolutely planning for this.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't like saying this, but
yeah,
the other part, you know, that this brings to mind, because when you're talking about the Golden Dome, you're talking about the security of the entire United States.
Yeah.
And there's different ways to secure the United States.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have thought that this was going to be the first thing.
Yeah.
The first thing I thought they would be doing is securing our infrastructure.
Yes.
And doesn't seem that they're going that way. And one of the things about our infrastructure is our energy systems.
Yeah.
And I know that the generals in the past have constantly put out stuff like, oh, they're super vulnerable, like massively vulnerable all of the time.
Yeah.
Like, and if they can just knock us out that way, it's like,
well, I think this is the Band-Aid for that. I think this is a kind of a Band-Aid for that.
I can see how they would consider it, because it's like, well, they have
just
to get in
all this.
You know, they have to get in to do this. But it's like, you know, they're gonna, like, it's not super hard to get in to some degree. And it's like, you only need one of these to really fall in a lot of places.
I'm thinking about this. How much of this Golden Dome thing is going to be actually also one giant, super advanced surveillance system, satellite surveillance system?
Yeah,
basically,
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
you know, it's looking in a whole bunch of places at once.
Yeah.
So it is a surveillance system.
It would just be a super, super, super high res surveillance system.
Because you got to think it's not that AI. Far removed from you know, China's system where they're, you know, watching you all the time. This one can do it from space though.
Yeah.
So
and I mean, if we just took about because we asked Grok, like, what do you think could be in the Golden Dome as compared to the Iron Dome? And you know, it came up with a bunch of stuff, mainly that the Golden Dome seems to be that it's definitely going to be more space based, obviously, but much more focused around radar, RF frequencies, um, different types of radar systems, direct energy systems for taking out smaller drones, UAVs, things like that. And and AI integration, AI integration into the entire thing. And gallium nitride enhanced ground-based radars, that as well. But AI integrated into everything. So, you know, really what we might be walking into with this $175 billion gambit is a giant Patriot Act level surveillance system.
Well, you got to think. Let me ask you, what's the difference between the Golden Dome we're talking about here?
Yeah.
And I hate to say it.
Yeah.
Skynet.
It's at that point, it's very similar to Skynet,
Yeah.
At that, I mean, especially if it's kind of flipped on its head a little bit,
it's not really that far removed.
Yeah.
And granted, you do want to be safe.
Yeah.
But we're the US. We shouldn't be choosing safety over freedom.
Yeah.
But I get that people want to be safe, and this is one of the ways to do it.
This looks like a pretty good article for this. 40 years after President Ronald Reagan first conceived the idea, defense industry leaders say the technology is finally advanced enough to build an invisible protective dome of space-based radars, missile interceptors, and laser weapons over the United States. President Donald Trump, infatuated by the Iron Dome missile defense system over Israel, first ordered the Defense Department to begin drawing up plans for a U.S. version, the Golden Dome, in January. But Israel is roughly the size of New Jersey, so a dome of protection could prove far more daunting for the much larger landmass of the U.S., and the threats to Israel usually come from its neighbors who use short-range weapons. America's foes, North Korea, Iran, Russia, and China, are half a world away and armed with intercontinental ballistic missiles, hypersonics, all factors that make the project more challenging for a nation of the size and scale of the U.S. So questions remain. Will the Golden Dome encompass the entire country, including Hawaii, Alaska, and U.S. military bases and locations like Guam? Would it be able to protect against short-range missiles, long-range missiles, unmanned, manned aircraft? Answers may come, at least in part, at the end of the month. There we go. Let's see.
I don't think those are the right questions.
What?
They're like...
It was about to, yeah.
Oh, okay.
In our view, it has to be kind of a layered system because, shooting a UAV, for example, is very different than shooting a hypersonic vehicle or hypersonic weapon. Raytheon President Phil Jasper told Fox News his aerospace company, a major U.S. defense contractor, manufactures the Patriot missile system, Javelin anti-tank missiles, and a variety of radar and air defense systems. The U.S. already employs a layered missile defense system known as the Command, Control, Battle Management, and Communication System that uses radar to detect incoming missiles and fire off interceptors. Did you want to interject? Did you want to add anything?
Well, yeah, I do want to add something here.
Yeah.
I don't think these, again, are quite the correct questions.
Yeah.
Because it's more like, can we defend against a missile?
Yeah.
Sure we can.
Mm-hmm.
Can we defend against an aircraft? Sure we can.
Yeah.
Can we get unmanned aircraft?
Yeah.
Manned aircraft? Different types of weapons?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And it's yes to all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But the Golden Dome, what it's putting out there is that it can do everything, but the real question is, can it do everything all at once? Because we shouldn't really be worried so much about one thing being launched at us.
Well, see, that's the thing behind Space Force in general. Space Force, what was the formulation of Space Force was to do projects like this. It was to combine all of our space assets into one branch of the military. Space Command had it for a while, but it really needed its own branch with all of our space assets together in one spot so that you could do things like the Golden Dome, so that you could have everything running at once.
Yeah, but the thing is, I wouldn't have thought that the Golden Dome would be made as a planned endeavor. I thought in my opinion, the Golden Dome would have come about because it's we made this system and this system and this system and this system.
Yeah.
And, through the time and use in Space Force, eventually they kind of all
converge.
And
yeah, and
don't get me wrong, that's what they're saying
That's
is
what we're
kind of
kinda
happening here.
Yeah.
But it sounds like they're kind of like forcing the issue almost, where it's like instead of them just focusing on this system and that system and making them better and bigger, it's like, no, we're just going to kind of force a connection between them. And great. But again, my main question though isn't so much that it was the, you know, if a whole bunch of things come over, how effective is this? And I haven't heard anything about
that. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Let's see. It has technology like the THAAD, THAAD, Terminal High Altitude Area Defense Battery to intercept ballistic missiles, and the Patriot to intercept cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and aircraft. But the country has seen 7 active THAAD batteries deployed globally, with an 8th expected to become operational this year. So that's like, we've only used these systems a handful of times. The Space Force General Michael Gutlian said weeks ago that building a Golden Dome will require a Manhattan Project level whole of government approach from the Missile Defense Agency, Air Force, Army, Navy, Space Force, Coast Guard, and more. So this dude is put in charge of it, and he says specifically it will require a Manhattan level whole of government approach from all of these agencies, which to me, in my little UFO brain, means that they're rolling out this program that they've been working on at a super high level for a long time. They've already been working on this.
Yeah.
And they're rolling it all out now. Defense contractors, some of whom have believed a Golden Dome-like project was on the horizon for years, say the protection zone may start around major cities like New York, Washington, D.C., or sensitive military sites before expanding to protect the entire homeland. What I'm understanding, the goal really is to protect the entire U.S., is to put a dome around the homeland, said Edward Zayas, a president of Space and Airborne Systems for L3 Harris Technologies. Jasper predicted some of these defensive measures could be installed rapidly as soon as 2026. I think they have some kind of trick up their sleeve that completes this. Otherwise, they wouldn't be talking in these terms and rolling this shit out publicly like this. Unless they're just posturing. It could all just be posturing.
It could all be posturing. It could also all be, if not that you should always take what a defense contractor says, with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
They're selling their best stuff here.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. John Clark, Lockheed's vice president of technology and strategic innovation, said the plan will require the Pentagon to think about what it has on the shelf. Okay. Think about so they've been working on this for a while now. There are systems that sit today in the Air National Guard or in our current local defense infrastructure domestically. Those could actually be deployed inside of the U.S. Clark noted that deploying defense infrastructure at home would draw down our current inventory for conflict in the greater world, but he suggested that anything pulled out of an army base today could be backfilled at a later date for global use. Zayas, whose company L3 Harris Technologies has already built satellites for the Missile Defense Agency that can be used for space-based radar systems for the Golden Dome, said the biggest challenge is missiles that no longer follow predictable paths. If you go back to your high school physics class, if you understand the angle and trajectory of a bullet, you understand exactly where it's going to land because it follows a parabola. ICBMs followed parabola trajectories for decades, but a new class of highly maneuverable cruise weapons and hypersonic, they don't, he explained. Their endpoint is uncertain, and our defensive systems in the U.S. now have to change to be more robust in order to track that weapon through its entire trajectory. Space-based radar will be the critical element of threats to the homeland in the future. Our challenge is really long-range weapons. It's weapons progressing large distances that are maneuvering around our current land-based and sea-based radar systems. So if the weapons maneuver around those systems, that means our current architecture can't provide fire control ordnance, and therefore it has to be moved to space. The Golden Dome could draw on missile defense systems already in the works, like the National Capital Region Integrated Air Defense System, which is now designed to protect Washington, D.C. from incoming threats, and employs systems like the Norwegian National Air Advanced Surface to Air Missile System. And it could look to other systems already in the works on a smaller scale. The Army is working on a new Iron Dome-like air defense system in Guam known as the Indirect Fire Protection Capability Increment 2 system, and it is developing high-powered microwave systems that could knock entire drone swarms out of the sky. And I think that's really the bread and butter of what this is. It's going to be high-powered microwave systems knocking this kind of stuff out of the air. Other needs could be over-the-horizon radar, including filling blind spots in the Arctic region for low-flying missiles that hug the Earth's curvature to avoid detection. The nation would have to break down barriers between Title 10 and Title 50 of the United States Code, the federal laws that govern the nation's defense and clandestine operations. Okay, so that's actually very interesting that Gutling said that. They would have to break down the barriers between Title 10 and Title 50 of the United States Code, that the federal laws that govern the nation's defense and clandestine operations. Without a doubt, our biggest challenge is going to be organizational behavior and culture to bring all the pieces together. So I think he's implying. Hold on, let's see. Yeah, here we go. Steve Marani, acting Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisitions and Sustainment, said Wednesday he was working with the private sector to address the formidable challenges of the project. Consistent with protecting the homeland, we're working with the industrial base and supply chain challenges associated with standing up the Golden Dome. See, that's going to be the most critical part about all of this, is these old guard defense contractors being forced to work with new defense contractors and just the industrial sector across the board. This isn't a project that can be done in secret. I mean, some parts of it can be, but
its capabilities can be secret, but you're going to see all the little parts around.
Yeah, it's going to require a whole government approach. Yeah. It's going to be like a World War II thing where we convert. Well, we're not converting our economy into that, but I think we're going to see a lot more space tech manufacturing across the board. I think that's just going to increase.
I mean, I think that's a given, though.
Yeah,
we're kind of heading there.
Yeah,
we have expected dates already. It's so yes, we're going to see a lot of space-based manufacturing.
Yeah, and but who knows if his big beautiful bill will actually pass and we'll get any of this. 175 billion is a big number for this. It's a lot of money for this. I'm wondering how much of that is going to go to kickbacks,
Yeah.
And hopefully they've sorted all those things out, but it's not really clear anymore how much corruption they've really sorted out, because you had Dan Bongino and Kash Patel go on and resolutely state that Epstein did not kill himself. Yeah. Epstein did kill himself. He did kill. They stated with absolution that Epstein did kill himself. So who knows what the government's up to right now with all this stuff.
Yeah, and the thing is, all these things are tools.
Yeah,
and I do think it is pertinent to say, like, it's who's using them.
Yeah,
this is a giant surveillance apparatus.
Yeah,
and again, I just hesitate to think, what would happen if this is used incorrectly.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. But I think we'll call it there for tonight, guys. Please like and subscribe. See you next time.